This is Optimal Finance Daily, episode 1977. How to Survive Inflation and Make It Work for You, Part 2, by Liz of Frugalwoods.com. And I'm your host and personal finance enthusiast, Diana Merriam. Today's post is actually a continuation from yesterday. So if you're new here, it'd be best to listen to yesterday's episode first. But if you're all caught up, let's hear Part 2 and continue optimizing your life. How to Survive Inflation and Make It Work for You, Part 2, by Liz of Frugalwoods.com. Whether inflation snaps back or increases, reevaluating your spending is always a solid exercise. Of course, I would say that. The stuff you can't eliminate: groceries, transportation, utilities, and housing. Groceries. Food offers us the most flexibility for spending less because inflation's not hitting all foods equally. According to the Consumer Price Index, beef increased 16%. Meat, poultry, fish, and eggs increased by 13.7%, and fruits and vegetables rose 3.2% in February and 1.5% in March. I love a burger as much as anyone, but I'm not buying beef right now. You can shelter yourself from the most egregious blows by simply not buying the thing. We've transitioned to a more heavily vegetarian diet the past few months to avoid these higher meat, chicken, fish, and beef prices. If you're able to change your eating habits for the short term, that's one of the easiest ways to ease your spending. Plus, doing this shook up our meal rotation, and we've enjoyed making some new recipes. As always, the frugal maxims of cheap and healthy eating apply. Avoid packaged, prepared, and pre-made foods. Reduce your meat and dairy consumption. Buy bulk, raw ingredients. We recently bought 50 pounds of organic whole wheat flour for baking bread, 50 pounds of organic oats for making oatmeal, and 50 pounds of dried chickpeas for making hummus and roasted chickpeas. And the prices were similar to what they were last year. And cook from scratch as much as your schedule and health will allow. Now's a great time to see if there's a bread machine, pressure cooker, Instapot, or crock pot for sale at the thrift store. Now's a great time to start cooking with dried beans. Now's a great time to start baking your own bread and desserts. Not everyone's schedule or health will allow them to do this, but if you can do one or all of these things, go for it. Side note, I know some folks have food allergies and specific health-related reasons for eating or not eating certain foods, and I'm not implying anyone should eat things that are dangerous or inaccessible to them, so don't come after me. Restaurant dining is up 8%, which is yet another reason to focus on meals at home. We've been eating out less the last few months, which I desperately miss, but I also know that right now I want to buckle down and spend less. Transportation. For many of us, there's not a whole lot we can do in this category, which is why I highlighted the potential changes to groceries. If you can drive less, do it. If you can work from home more often, do it. If you can carpool or utilize public transportation, do it. If you must buy a car, focus on fuel efficiency, but I absolutely would not recommend buying a car just for that reason. In fact, if you can avoid buying a car at all, used or new, that'd be ideal because used car prices are up an eye-watering 35.3%, and new vehicles are up 12.5%. Given that, don't turn a $40 gas problem into a $40,000 new car problem. Again, I 100% get that sometimes you can't wait any longer to buy a car, but if you can wait, if buying a new car would be more nice than necessity, wait it out. Caveat yet again, maybe prices continue to increase and you should actually go out and buy 10 cars today. Who could know? Utilities. If your state offers an energy audit, sign up for one today. You might be able to reduce your energy costs, or there may be state-funded programs offering rebates and tax credits for things like installing a more efficient water heater, etc. Also, check with your electric company to see if they offer any programs or rebates you can apply for. An easy DIY route is to buy an energy monitor, which you can plug into your appliances to see what's draining the most electricity. Housing. Much like transportation, there's not a whole lot most of us can do about where we live. If you can delay buying a new house, that'd be good, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes you just gotta buy a house when you need a house. If you have stable housing, be really grateful for it. Remember how I mentioned a while back that it would be a good idea to check into refinancing your mortgage when interest rates were at historic lows? I hope you did so. For those of you with a fixed, low interest rate mortgage, be very thankful for that rate. Having a fixed, low interest rate mortgage can be a hedge against inflation because your mortgage is denominated in pre-inflation dollars, while your salary is hopefully increasing due to inflation. Periods of inflation are one reason why I often advise folks in the accumulation phase not to pay off a fixed, low interest rate mortgage. Make inflation work for you. Employment. In addition to making adjustments to your spending, examine how you might be able to increase your income. We're in a very interesting employment environment right now, and unemployment is historically low at 3.6%. What this means broadly, lots of employers are hiring and there aren't many applicants for these jobs. What this means for you, it's probably an excellent time to ask for a raise from your current employer, look for a higher paying job, and request more flexibility from your job in order to offset other costs. For example, more work from home days to avoid high gas prices, and cook dried beans in your thrift store pressure cooker during your lunch break. Interest rates. Interest rates are up right now, which is not great for things like mortgage interest rates, but is great for things like high interest savings accounts. Review the interest rate on your checking or savings accounts and consider switching banks if you're not earning a solid percentage. It's also a good idea to ensure you have a valid credit card strategy that's reaping rewards you'll actually use. Flex your frugal muscles. A period of inflation is a fantastic time to bust out your frugal skills. I find that my frugality waxes and wanes over the years, as evidenced by my monthly expense reports. You may have noticed I've tamped down our household spending since the start of 2022. You, like me, have probably honed your ability to save money over the years, and now's your chance to utilize those capabilities. I don't see this as a forever thing. I see this as I'm going to mindfully spend a little bit less while inflation runs around like a frat boy with a red solo cup of jungle juice. Summary. Number 1, don't panic. No one ever makes good financial decisions when they're panicking. Number 2, understand the difference between your fixed costs and your discretionary expenses. Number 3, if you'd like help identifying those, take my free Uber Frugal Month Challenge. Number 4, look for ways to eliminate, delay, and reduce your discretionary expenses. Number 5, explore ways to reduce your fixed costs. Number 6, understand which items are hit hardest by inflation and strategize ways to avoid buying those things, such as beef and used cars. Number 7, don't pay off a fixed low interest rate mortgage. Number 8, ask for a raise or find a higher paying job. Number 9, examine the interest rate on your savings and checking accounts to make sure you're earning something. Number 10, have a credit card strategy that gives you rewards you'll actually use. Number 11, use this time to flex and develop your frugal muscles. And number 12, know that no one knows what will happen and things could go back to normal or inflation could continue to rise. You just listened to part 2 of the post titled How to Survive Inflation and Make It Work for You by Liz of Frugalwoods.com. While we're all feeling the effects of inflation right now, and it is really high, it certainly has been worse in the past. I find that helpful to remember because when economic conditions shift, it's easy for it to feel like the sky is falling or it's, quote, different this time. but historically, we have navigated this before. Another example is mortgage rates. It's super uncomfortable to see them climbing over 5%. But remember that the average mortgage interest rate on a 30-year loan in 1981 was over 16%. One thing that I find helpful in navigating higher costs is reminding myself that I have options. For example, I just got back from a trip with a friend where I normally would fly, but flights would have been $500 each. So instead, we opted to take a 9-hour drive. Even with the gas prices as high as they are, we paid less than $200 in gas. Also, when it comes to groceries, some items are seeing more drastic price increases than others. So for example, I'm noticing that beef is pretty expensive, but pork prices are more reasonable. So I'm eating more pork than beef these days. We can't control inflation, but we can control how we respond to it. If in general we maintain a sufficient gap between our income and expenses, it becomes much more manageable to deal with rising prices. Perhaps this is a season when we're not able to save as much as we usually do, but that's okay. This is why we've created financial bandwidth for ourselves so that inflation becomes an inconvenience versus a catastrophe. And that's another episode of Optimal Finance Daily in the books. I'll be back with more posts for you tomorrow. So have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll catch you on the Sunday show where your optimal life awaits.